Stay tuned for tonight's adventure with the Fat Man.
Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it's good to be where you are, because I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Baltimore Fats, and this is me minding my manners. Yeah! Okay. All right, so over the break, I had an opportunity to watch one of Miss Havisham's Christmas videos here, this Bakewell Christmas Tree Festival video, and in it she visits the Bakewell churchyard. And at about this mark here, she mentions that this is like the tomb or sarcophagus of the Duke of Rutland. And when I heard that, I was like, wait a minute, the Duke of Rutland? Right? That's how we know that the Poes were in Sherwood Forest. And, you know, I haven't looked at the Duke of Rutland at all yet. And he probably thought he escaped me. But he didn't, thanks to the help of Miss Havisham. And so we're going to take a quick look at the Duke of Rutland, because it turns out that this is a very important role in this story. And so this is just going to try to be a quick video about this. All right, so I'm going to start at Belvoir Castle real quick. All right, and so now this is Belvoir Castle. I mean, look at this place. It's absolutely amazing. Right? It's a giant castle. All right, and I love the logo that they have here is the crowned peacock. And now, what do we know from the very first episode of the Poe Chronicles is that Poe may mean peacock. Right? And so I think it's interesting that we have the crowned peacock at Belvoir as the logo for Belvoir Castle. All right, and so this is an interior. I don't know what, none of these shots were listed on the webpage, some big ballroom or whatever, right? But it says the Belvoir Castle's history dates back to the 11th century. It's the ancestral home of the Dukes of Rutland, where the family have lived in an unbroken line for almost 1,000 years. 1,000 years! Think about that. That's a long time for a single family to occupy a home. And they don't really actually live there, I don't think, because it's a tourist attraction and you can buy memberships to help preserve and keep the grounds and so forth, as if, the Manners family needs this. All right. And so the name Belvoir, meaning beautiful view in French, and pronounced today as beaver. Beaver.
Nice beaver.
I don't know. I like Belvoir better. Beautiful view, because really it sits high up on a hill. Of course it does. All right, and it has the most beautiful view of Nottinghamshire and Leicestershire, and I'll never pronounce that one. Leicestershire and Lincolnshire. So we have the Disneys represented and the Poes and the Byrons represented in this land that they can overlook from this castle high upon the hill. These dukes and earls of Rutland. Right? Here's the sitting room, the gallery or whatever. I don't know. I see this picture of Henry VIII and all it makes me think about is Vigo the Carpathian from Ghostbusters 2. Right? Because honestly, I mean, who wouldn't just want to lounge around under this picture of Henry VIII or whichever Henry that is? All right, but it says that the land at Belvoir was a gift from William the Conqueror, because all of this land that we're looking at at this part of the story is gifts from William the Conqueror, right, to one of his Norman barons, one Robert de Tony, right, who was the standard bearer at the Battle of Hastings in 1066. That's a really important position. You want to talk about bravery, riding in the front line, just carrying a flag. I mean, right? So, he was a very important person to William the Conqueror, no doubt about it, right? And he built the first castle there in 1067. But of course, as they present this narrative to us and they try to create this extended history, they say there are like 4 different castles built. They suffered casualties in different wars and conflicts, including the English Civil War. But the castle as we see it today was built in the 1800s by this one James Wyatt, right? And it was built under the specifications of this Elizabeth, 5th Duchess of Rutland. And that's one of the more unusual things about the Earldom of Rutland, is that it's one of the few that is transferable through the maternal line as well. If there are no male heirs left, it will go to the next highest female heiress. All right? And then if she has a male offspring, it will go to him. kind of thing. And she's also really, really important because as a child, she was fascinated by her father's lavish and fashionable improvements at their family home, Castle Howard in Yorkshire. That's right. So she's a Howard, right? She's a member of the Earldom of Arundel, right? Which is a premier earldom. And this is something that I've been finding out looking at this through the Dukes of Rutland and the Earls of Rutland, right? The Earldom of Arundel is the premier earldom, meaning it is the oldest extant earldom that is still active today, right? And of course, the Arundel connection, the importance of that name in the Maryland story and its connections to the Mud City Paradigm puzzle tree, just absolutely amazing that they marry into this Rutland family, which quite literally is overseeing the Byrons and the Poes and the Disneys. A really, really important family. And so here's another room inside the castle. Again, they didn't label these pictures on the website I cribbed them from, but I like this one because it shows me that it's always 420 at Belvoir Castle. I like that. So, all right. So who was in Belvoir Castle during that time when the Byrons and the Poes were the keepers of Sherwood Forest? Well, it was Roger Manners, the 5th Earl of Rutland, right? So he was born October 6, 1576, and he died on June 6, a nice 66 there, and you get a 6 and a 3 out of 1612. So interesting numerology on his death date. I mean, he's Earl from 1858 to 1612 when he died, right? But he's also known as Lord Roos. And now what that means is that he's the Baron of de Roos, right? And I don't really want to get too into the de Roos family, but they're the premier barony, right? So now we have connecting within the Manners family here in the Earls of Rutland, two of the oldest creations of dukedoms and earldoms, right? Combining in one family. I think that's really important, right? It seems to me. Right? And as you may have noticed, he becomes Earl at 12 years old. His father dies, right? And leaves him as a ward to the crown, a ward to Queen Elizabeth, who passes him along to William Cecil, who raises him. And William Cecil, of course, was Robert Cecil's brother, right? The Hunchback, right? And so Roger Manners would have grown up there, and he would have grown up around Roger Bacon, and these, and all of those other court people that we talked about. And so as being a member of that court, of course, he was close with Squiggy. He was really close with Squiggy, Robert Devereux, right? And he actually got into a little bit of hot water for that with Devereux's, attempted rebellion and everything. He got implicated in that, had to pay a heavy fine, but after he pays the fine, all is forgiven and he's welcomed back into the court. Of course he is, because his family is that important, right? But, so of course, obviously, if he's that close with Devereux, he's close with Lenny too, right? Because Leonard Poe is Devereux's boy, right? Devereux's main man. Right? And so not only is he close with Lenny and Squiggy and all of these courtesans around the Elizabethan court and in that crossover to King James, right? He's a patron of Inigo Jones, right? And so just quickly, Inigo Jones, right? He was the most notable architect in England at the time and was the first to introduce the classical architecture of Rome and the Italian Renaissance to Britain. Right, so he's the guy that they peg in the book as responsible for those earliest Roman type structures in England. All right, and because he travels to Rome and comes back with all these ideas, and he meets Palladius or Palladium or whatever that guy's name was. I talked about him really, really early on in Mud City. Yeah, so it's all going to come back, and there's way more to go on Inigo Jones down the line. So we're going to get back to him. Right? But so not only does he have all of these connections, he's also, and they quite openly talk about how friendly and what a patron he was to not just Inigo Jones, but also to the Byrons and the other more notable writers and poets of the era. Right? And so, and tying and getting this circle even closer to everything that I believe is coming out of this region and how they use this region to introduce and create poetry and literature as we know it. Because of his patrony of the arts the way that it was, he is also on the very short list to be the actual writer of William Shakespeare's works. Right? So we have to bring Shakespeare in now to everything that's coming out of Sherwood Forest, and connecting Shakespeare to Poe. Right? It's absolutely unbelievable. Right? It says that, and if you research this at all, it is quite well-known idea that Shakespeare may not have written anything, and that he may have been a beard for any number of reasons, and who knows if that person even existed at all. But they say that Roger's candidacy here was first suggested in 1906, and it was promoted that Rutland wrote the comedies and the narrative poems and the sonnets, right? And that the dramas may have been written by the Earl of Southampton. I didn't look him up. So whoever he was, right? And, but later on it's dropped and he's promoted as perhaps even the sole author of Shakespeare's work. And now, again, as I was saying, connecting this to Poe, those connections aren't finished yet. And when I actually get into Poe's life, it's going to connect back to Shakespeare. Just unbelievable that Shakespeare decided he wanted to jump himself into this story real quick, especially when we think about language as spellcraft and how important Shakespeare was to the English language. Because Shakespeare is really important in the formation of modern English as we know it today, right? It says here that he invented 1,700 words. And so I wanted to find out, what kind of percentage was that of the English language? How many words do people know? And so it says here that most adult native test takers range from 20,000 to 35,000 words. What kind of average is it? 20 to 35,000? That's like a 75% difference from one number to the other. Hey, that's a huge difference. Is this the erudite know 35,000 and the uneducated know 20,000? How do they split that up? I'm not going to get into it, but it's just curious. That's what these numbers make me think of. So if you go on the low end, almost 10% of the words that people may know come from one source, allegedly, this Shakespearean source. And also, I have to think about the way things are coming with the way things are coming together with this literature aspect coming out of Sherwood Forest here and its connections to Poe, and that they could be this hidden royal family. The crowned peacock of Belvoir Castle could have actually been Poe, because the history is such as that, because history as it's presented to us, doesn't necessarily have to be so. And that, these could all be a very small number of people, that have just been masqueraded through history. Right? And so, it's just amazing how, just a quick look at this Rutland family has really tied all of this together, and how, but really incredible, the story that I'm pulling out of Sherwood Forest here and the Poes and all of these families and their relation to this false paradigm and our understanding of our reality as we know it, and culture and arts and things like that, and how those are used as tools of social control. Just absolutely incredible. All right, so I'm going to wrap this one up here. Remember, guys, just because you don't know the truth doesn't mean you can't have fun with the lies. And so we'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.